Alright guys, I'm going to try to make this video quick and to the point. I've seen a lot of YouTubers, both big and small, making videos on balance, and I think that people are just missing the mark on how things need to be balanced from the dev side. Now, there's two ways that the game has to be balanced, and these two balances have to be maintained together, which is what makes it so difficult to balance asymmetrical games. The two ways are both win rates for both sides and player base ratio. Win rates must be balanced between the two sides, meaning trying to keep a 50% win rate for survivors and 50% for demons. These numbers will never be perfect, but they should be the goal. This must be balanced around the entirety of the community. If you balance around solo queue, you are not balancing around the largest portion of the community, but instead choosing to ignore the rest of the community in order to favor a specific part of the player base. Balancing around the top players works for competitive games, but there is no ranking system or even MMR here. So this would also alienate most of the player base and be unhelpful to the community. The second balance that they need to apply is maintaining the player base ratio, meaning for a 4v1 game, the devs should strive to keep 80% of their player base playing as survivors and 20% as demons. If the population leans too heavily to either side, then the queue times will increase. Now, I know a lot of people are under the impression that Saber just makes over-the-top changes for whichever side is crying the loudest, and I do agree that they go too far with their balance updates, but that's not to say that the updates themselves are unwarranted. What we saw in the update before Kandar was demon buffs, and at that time Swingpoint had made a video where he said it may seem like not making any sense from the outside, but in reality it was probably a band-aid patch because the player base was bleeding demon players and needed to stop it. Now, assuming he was correct, then naturally it would make sense for the Kandar update to have been trying to fix win rates if there was too much of an imbalance afterwards. What they should have done, instead of waiting until the 2013 update and dropping a bunch of changes at once, is make a patch much earlier to fix quality of life issues, like objective distances being banished to the next objective and exploit fixes. This would have allowed them to gauge the reaction of their player base better, instead of dropping all of these nerfs at once with the big changes, which makes it feel super overwhelming for survivors because it feels like the entire game is changing for them. Now, the biggest thing I wish that Saber would do is simply add these quality of life changes whenever they can, not waiting, forever to do it. Things like RNG and whatnot that were for the, RNG objectives for demons beforehand, or even now, I do like the UI changes that Sledge had suggested, things that, allow survivors to see what other people have in their inventory for shemps and whatnot. Things like this could, they could be super helpful for people, and they wouldn't actually affect the game itself necessarily. It would just be a helpful communication, which I think would be very good for making these changes that aren't going to be game-changing, that aren't going to be huge, but they are helpful and they can improve the overall gameplay experience. I think that's super important. And now what I see happening, this is just pure assumption, just guessing out here, but what I assume is going to happen next is that, yes, there is going to be a demon nerf of some time. At least Puppeteer Nerf. And, I'm sure a lot of demon mains are going to be like, oh, well, it's just, survivors can't adjust. They can't adjust to the game anymore. And, if Saber's looking at this is their biggest complaint. That's constant, right? And, if survivor queues are instant, I think that's a good move to do. I don't understand why they wouldn't. Just looking at it from the dev side, you have to look at it from the dev side, okay? That sometimes, yes, complaints have to be fixed. If something that, half your community is complaining about, okay, well then they have to tweak things. Their issue lies in, if they go and just buff a bunch of random shit, or, you know, nerf a bunch of random stuff from the demons and just, you know, revert, like, you know, the entire or half the patch or whatever. That would be the issue, is not taking these smaller steps, right? Just taking things to just tweak the game to make it more fun for people. So I'm hoping that they take smaller steps. They do something just like nerfing Puppeteer, and, you know, maybe they will take some, you know, advice on the UI. Who knows? But we'll see how that goes, I guess. Okay, so the last thing here, you may be asking, okay, well, why do you think that these two things, the player base ratio and the win rates, are what they balance off of? My answer is Dead by Daylight, the largest asymmetrical game in existence that is also a 4v1 game. With their last updates, where they buffed a bunch of killers, things, and just changed some overall, like lowering gen speeds and whatnot, they had posted a few pictures of the results of this, and pretty much the results were just the average queue time went down 59 seconds, right? There was a player base imbalance. Not enough people were wanting to play killers. They wanted to get the, you know, more people motivated to play killers. So they had said in their thing that they wanted them to be more oppressive and more deadly. And what you could see was that beforehand it was very balanced around just the kill and escape rate. There was a 53% average kill rate, and now there's a 61%. Before there was a 47% chance of escaping, and now there's a 39%. So these balances of win rates have been sacrificed in order to, you know, get their queue times down and get a player base balance more even, I guess, to a 4v1 ratio. So, you know, maybe it's not the greatest thing, you know, I'm sure some people don't agree with that, but that's, I'm guessing, how they go off of it, right? I mean, they told Sledge that that's how, well, not that specifically, but that they do balance around stats. And so I know he was saying we want the stats, and I think he wants the stats to try to prove that, you know, solo queue is the largest part of the player base, but I don't think that's what the stats are actually going to be used for. You know, I don't think they use them to just see what part of the player base is largest to balance around them. I think they look at it to see what kind of player base balance there are, you know, if they're close to that 1-to-4 ratio between demons and survivors, and then also what the win rates are at, because they have to keep both of these balanced, right? If the queue times get too long, that's unhealthy for the game. If the win rates are completely one-sided, that's not healthy for the game. So that's just my thoughts, my overall, you know, what I've gathered about this. So I hope that was helpful or insightful for some of you guys. Thank you.